Beyond the Gates spoilers for Thursday, August 28, 2025 tease that Madison regrets not coming forward about Allison sooner. It's not a fleeting regret, but the kind that sinks into her bones and weighs on her conscience every time she wakes. Madison has always carried fragments of knowledge about Allison, whispers of the darkness that clings to her and the toxic history she shared with Chelsea. She believed she knew enough to keep her distance but not enough to sound the alarm. Now, however, as events take a darker turn than she could have ever anticipated, that silence weighs like a curse. Madison can't stop replaying the moments when she could have spoken up, the moments when Chelsea might have been spared from Allison's net. Each missed opportunity is sharper than the last, a reminder that hesitation has consequences, and those consequences now play out in real time. Bill and Danny, in their desperate attempt to rally help, take to live streaming. Their faces are pale with worry, the urgency vibrating in every word they send out into the digital void. The broadcast is not polished, not structured, but raw, immediate, and agonizingly human. Danny tries to steady her voice, but her hands shake on screen, betraying the storm raging inside. Bill stands beside her, his expression taut, torn between the fury of a father and the helplessness of a man who has realized too late that he missed vital parts of his daughter's life. Their plea is simple: Chelsea is missing, and they need every pair of eyes and ears to help locate her. The comment sections flood with sympathy, and fragmented leads. People they have never met pour their emotions into the stream, sending out promises to look, to search. When the broadcast ends, the silence in the room becomes unbearable. It is then that Bill receives information from Mason, information that detonates inside him like a hidden charge. The realization hits him hard: he has overlooked more about his daughter than he dares admit. While building a new life with Haley, his second wife, Bill had told himself he was still present, still involved. But what Mason shares shatters that illusion. Bill learns about Chelsea's sexuality, something that should never have been hidden or shocking but feels like a revelation only because he had never been paying close enough attention. Alongside it comes knowledge of the torment Chelsea endured in the past, trauma that was invisible to him, shielded perhaps by Danny or buried under Chelsea's attempts to carry the weight herself. The gulf between the father he thought he was and the father Chelsea needed yawns wide, leaving him unmoored. In those moments, Danny becomes a figure he can no longer overlook. The truth crystallizes: she had been the one carrying everything, shielding their children, absorbing the blows of reality while he turned away. Danny bore it silently, without demanding his acknowledgement, perhaps believing he would not have given it even if she had asked. The shame cuts him deeply. Haley, sensing the shift, grows restless. Her fears take shape as she watches Bill's eyes soften toward Danny, watches the gravity between them realign. She fears not just the unraveling of their marriage but the possibility that Bill's protective instincts, reignited by the crisis, may draw him back to the life he once abandoned. While Bill wrestles with revelations, Chelsea faces her own nightmare. She is trapped in Allison's domain, forced to endure the games of a woman who thrives on psychological warfare. Allison's obsession has always simmered at dangerous levels, but now it spills over in violent, unpredictable ways. She corners Chelsea, not with affection but with domination, demanding submission and forcing boundaries until they snap. When Allison tries to coerce Chelsea into intimacy, Chelsea's resistance is immediate, fierce, and unrelenting. She refuses to be broken down, even as fear claws at her insides. The confrontation escalates quickly. Allison, losing control, brandishes a knife. The metal catches the dim light, sharp and cold, promising consequences if Chelsea refuses to obey. But survival sharpens Chelsea's instincts. In the chaos of their struggle, she manages to land a powerful kick that sends Allison sprawling. For the first time, Chelsea sees an opportunity because when Allison hits the ground, something slips from her pocket, a small, gleaming key, unmistakably the one that could free Chelsea from her restraints. Hope sparks, faint but alive. Chelsea reins in her panic, recalibrating her approach. Instead of open defiance, she begins to feign compliance. She softens her tone, allows her posture to ease, giving Allison the illusion of control. It is a dangerous gamble, but Chelsea knows that raw resistance will only escalate Allison's fury further. If she can lull Allison into a sense of dominance, she might get close enough to retrieve the key. But Allison is not easily deceived. She watches with suspicion, eyes narrowing as she senses the subtle shift in Chelsea's demeanor. Just as Chelsea edges closer to success, Allison realizes what is happening. Rage overtakes her, hotter than before. She lashes out, striking Chelsea across the face with an open-handed slap so forceful it reverberates through the room. The sting is not only physical but psychological, a cruel reminder of the power imbalance that still holds. Allison sneers, her words dripping venom, warning Chelsea against trying to outwit her again. It is in this volatile exchange that Chelsea utters something that fractures the performance entirely. She mentions Allison's husband. The words are meant to cut, to remind Allison that she is not untouchable, that her private life is not immune to exposure. But instead of destabilizing Allison, the remark elicits an unexpected revelation. Allison laughs a sharp, unhinged sound and admits that the supposed husband was nothing but a charade. She confesses that the man Chelsea believed to be her partner, Craig, is no husband at all. He is nothing more than a paid companion, a male escort working under Joey's operations. Allison had orchestrated the entire facade, hiring Craig to play the role of the doting husband, weaving a narrative designed to mislead Chelsea into believing she was entangled in something more conventional, less dangerous. The admission twists the knife deeper. Chelsea realizes she is not merely dealing with obsession but with a meticulously staged illusion, crafted solely to trap her. Allison's devotion is not love, it is fanaticism. She is a fan gone too far, consumed by an unhealthy fixation that blurs the lines between adoration and control. Chelsea stares at the unraveling performance, the edges of her reality fraying as she grapples with the depth of deception. This is not a simple abduction, not merely the act of someone lashing out. It is a carefully constructed nightmare designed with her at the center, tailored to exploit her vulnerabilities and keep her captive in a web of manipulation. Meanwhile, the search outside intensifies. The live stream has reached more people than Bill or Danny dared hope, and leads begin to trickle in. Some are false, the noise of a world too vast to pin down truth quickly, but a few shimmer with possibility. Madison, however, remains haunted. She knows more about Allison's history than anyone else in their circle, and with each passing hour her silence feels like complicity. The guilt gnaws at her, forcing her to consider whether confessing now would help or simply expose the depths of what she withheld. Her mind replays scenes of Allison's past moments of cruelty, outbursts, obsessions that crossed lines. At the time, Madison told herself it wasn't her battle, that Allison's darkness was something Chelsea could navigate on her own. Now, watching the devastation unfold, Madison wonders if bystander apathy is ever forgivable. Bill's mind drifts back and forth between fury at Allison and shame at himself. He replays memories of Chelsea through new eyesure silences, her distant expressions, the way Danny sometimes tried to bridge gaps without calling him out. He remembers the times Haley dismissed Chelsea's behaviors as phases or dramatics, and how often he nodded along, choosing peace in his marriage over confrontation. Every recollection is now evidence against him, a silent ledger of neglect. Haley sees it, too. The more Bill dwells on the past, the more he turns toward Danny, searching not only for answers but for absolution. Haley's anxieties spiral. She knows what it looks like when a man begins to remember the family he left behind. Her fear is not entirely selfish. There is genuine concern that Bill's rekindled protectiveness might mean reckless decisions, choices that could jeopardize their stability. But beneath that is a deeper dread, that she is about to lose him, not just emotionally but in every tangible way. Back in the place of captivity, Chelsea feels the weight of time pressing down. Allison, still riding the wave of her unmasked obsession, begins to taunt Chelsea with fragments of her plan. She talks about the lengths she went to ensure Chelsea was isolated, the manipulations that steered events here. Every word is a weapon, designed to chip away at Chelsea's willpower. Yet within the madness, Chelsea searches for cracks. She listens not only to what Allison says but how she says it, cataloging patterns, moods, weaknesses. She understands now that her only chance of survival lies in turning Allison's instability against her. The knife remains close, the key still tantalizingly out of reach, and the tension grows unbearable. Chelsea's cheek still burns from the slap, but her mind burns hotter, refusing to yield. She knows she cannot wait passively for rescue. If she does not act, Allison's volatility could escalate to something irreversible. The deception about Craig was not merely a reveal, it was a glimpse into the depths Allison is willing to go. If she could fabricate an entire marriage to manipulate reality, what else is she capable of when cornered? And outside, as the night deepens, the web of connections begins to close in. Danny refuses to give up, her determination a counterpoint to Bill's guilt. Madison weighs whether to finally confess the full extent of her knowledge, and Bill begins to understand that protecting his family requires more than regret. He demands action. The stage is set, the pieces moving closer, yet Chelsea's fate remains balanced precariously between resistance and collapse. The room grows colder as Allison's mask of control begins to fracture. Chelsea sits rigid, hands bound, heart hammering so loudly it nearly drowns out the taunts being hurled at her. Every word Allison spits drips with a feverish devotion, twisting love into possession, admiration into tyranny. Chelsea knows that her survival depends not on brute force but on timing, patience, and the sliver of weakness that must inevitably show itself. For a woman like Allison so consumed by her own illusions, the cracks will come. Chelsea only needs to stay alive long enough to exploit them. Far away, Danny cannot rest. Even after hours of searching through leads from the broadcast, she refuses to give in to exhaustion. She knows Chelsea is out there, somewhere within reach, waiting for someone to break through. The mother's instincts in her refuse to quiet. Every failed lead feels like a knife twist, every delay like betrayal. Yet she presses on, her determination burning hotter than her despair. Bill watches her with a mixture of awe and shame. This is what he should have been all along, relentless, unyielding, willing to fight for their child. Instead, Danny has borne that weight alone. He begins to see her not just as the woman he once loved but as the fortress that shielded their children when he could not. Every glance she gives him is sharp, edged with years of disappointment and resentment, but beneath it lies the faintest flicker of hope that maybe, this time, he is finally ready to step up. Haley notices the shift. She sees how Bill hovers near Danny, how his guilt transforms into action at Danny's side. The fear that had gnawed at her now crystallizes into something undeniable. She is losing him, not gradually but all at once. Bill's heart is being pulled back toward the family he abandoned, and no amount of pleading or posturing will stop it. Haley wants to scream, to demand his loyalty, but she knows this crisis gives her no leverage. To voice her insecurities now would only expose her irrelevance. She swallows her dread, but it churns inside, poisoning every glance she casts toward Danny. Inside the captivity, Chelsea studies Allison's movements, waiting. The knife gleams in Allison's hand as she paces, ranting about betrayal, about devotion, about the future she insists Chelsea owes her. Chelsea seizes on these tirades, recognizing them not just as threats but as windows into Allison's fractured psyche. She notices how Allison's grip on the knife tightens when Chelsea resists, but how it loosens when she pretends to listen, feigning curiosity or sympathy. These small details become lifelines, teaching Chelsea how to navigate the storm. The key remains in Allison's pocket now, carefully guarded after the earlier scare. But Chelsea cannot unsee it. Every movement Allison makes reminds her that freedom dangles inches away. She begins to craft a strategy, blending fear with feigned compliance. If she can coax Allison into monologuing longer, distract her with the illusion of control, she might find another opening. Meanwhile, Madison finally makes her choice. The guilt is unbearable, and the silence has nearly destroyed her. She confesses to Danny and Bill, spilling the truth about what she knew of Allison's past. The stories pour out incidents of obsession, moments of violence, patterns of behavior that point clearly to danger. Madison admits she kept it all quiet, or that Chelsea would see the red flags herself. The confession lands like a blow. Danny stares at her, torn between fury and gratitude. Bill, still raw from his own revelations, cannot decide whether to curse Madison or thank her for giving them something solid to act on. What matters most is that the confession provides clarity. With Madison's details, they finally have a lead that feels real. A location Allison had used in the past, a place that fits the twisted sense of theater she thrives on. Bill and Danny seize on it immediately, rallying help and pushing forward with renewed purpose. For Bill, this is not just a rescue mission. It is a chance to redeem himself, to prove to Danny and Chelsea that he can be the father and protector he failed to be before. Haley, however, begins to unravel. As Bill focuses entirely on Danny and their children, she feels herself fading from the narrative. The life she built with him now seems like a fragile construct, one that cannot withstand the weight of his rediscovered loyalty. She watches from the margins, powerless to stop the tide that is carrying him away. In her desperation, she contemplates whether to confront him or to leave quietly before the rejection becomes explicit. As the search party narrows in, Chelsea's battle reaches its tipping point. Allison's mania crescendos. She circles Chelsea, spitting venom about how the world never understood her, how Chelsea was always meant to belong to her alone. She paints visions of a life they could share, far removed from anyone else, a life built on Allison's terms. Chelsea feels disgust coil in her stomach, but she keeps her face calm, nodding slightly, murmuring just enough to keep Allison's delusion alive. Inside, her mind races, calculating when to strike. The opening finally comes. Allison, in the grip of her own fantasies, sets the knife down briefly on a nearby table while rifling through a box of mementos she collected obsessively. Chelsea's pulse spikes. She edges closer, wrists straining against the cuffs, body twisting at unnatural angles. The key shifts in Allison's pocket as she bends, and for a split second, her attention is fully absorbed. Chelsea lunges with calculated precision, snatching the knife before Allison realizes what has happened. The room explodes in chaos. Allison screams, clawing at Chelsea, trying to reclaim control. The struggle is brutal, desperate, neither woman willing to yield. The knife flashes between them, and Chelsea fights not just for freedom but for her very existence. In the scuffle, the key spills onto the floor again, skittering out of reach. Chelsea's heart lurches as Allison dives for it, but adrenaline fuels her strength. She throws herself forward, tackling Allison, forcing her down with a ferocity born of sheer survival instinct. Outside, Bill and Danny arrive with the search team. The building looms ahead, dark and foreboding, but every instinct tells them this is the place. Bill grips the flashlight tighter, his jaw set, every nerve focused on the thought of Chelsea inside. Danny leads the way, unflinching despite the danger, because for her there is no alternative. Failure is not an option. Her daughter's life is on the line. Inside, the struggle rages on. Chelsea's arms ache, her lungs burn, but she refuses to give in. Allison thrashes beneath her, screaming promises and curses, her obsession spiraling into madness. The sounds of the fight echo through the building, and then, in a moment that feels suspended in time, Chelsea manages to grab the key. Her fingers close around it, trembling but determined. She fumbles with the lock, the cuffs biting into her skin, while Allison claws at her desperately. The mechanism clicks, metal falls away, and for the first time, Chelsea is free. Freedom, however, does not mean safety. Allison lunges again, wild and relentless. The knife becomes the center of their struggle once more. Chelsea, now unshackled, fights with renewed strength. She knows the outcome will not be decided by escape alone. It will be decided by who walks away from this confrontation alive. Bill and Danny burst into the room at the climax of the fight. What they see sears into their minds. Chelsea, bloodied but unbowed, locked in combat with a woman whose eyes burn with fanaticism. For a heartbeat, they hesitate, the shock freezing them in place. But then instinct takes over. Bill moves first, Danny at his side, both rushing forward to pull Chelsea away from danger. The intervention turns the tide. Allison, overwhelmed, tries to lash out, but the combined force of Chelsea's resistance and the arrival of her family shatters her control. She screams, a sound that echoes with rage and despair, before collapsing into sobs that carry no remorse, only the lament of a fanatic who has lost her delusion. For Chelsea, the nightmare is not truly over. Even as Allison is restrained, the images of the ordeal cling to her, etched into her mind with brutal clarity. The betrayal, the manipulation, the violence, they are scars that will not fade easily. But in the arms of Danny, and under the watchful eyes of Bill, she feels something she thought she had lost, the faint spark of safety. Bill, shaken to his core, realizes the cost of his absence. He looks at Chelsea and sees not just the daughter he failed but the woman she has become, stronger than he ever imagined. He looks at Danny and sees the fortress he should never have left unguarded. The weight of regret threatens to crush him, but beneath it flickers determination. He cannot change the past, but he can fight for what remains. Haley arrives at the scene later, her face pale, her voice trembling as she takes in the sight of Bill standing protectively with Danny and Chelsea. The image confirms her worst fears. The bond between them, reforged in fire, leaves little space for her. She feels herself dissolve at the edges, unnecessary. Her presence barely registers to them. Their focus is entirely on survival, healing, and the fragile hope of moving forward together. Madison, watching from a distance, feels the crushing weight of her complicity. Though she helped lead them here, she cannot shake the thought that Chelsea's suffering might have been avoided if she had spoken sooner. The guilt is permanent, stitched into her soul. Yet in Chelsea's exhausted but defiant gaze, she also sees something else. Resilience. The young woman has endured horrors that could have broken her completely, and yet she stands. That survival becomes Madison's only solace, the fragile thread that keeps her from collapsing under her own shame. The aftermath is not clean. Trauma lingers, relationships strain, and the path forward is uncertain. Bill and Danny face the question of what they mean to each other now. After years of separation and betrayal, Chelsea must grapple with scars that may never fade. Haley must decide whether to fight for a place she no longer belongs in or to let go. And Madison must live with the knowledge of her silence, a burden she cannot lay down. But in the quiet after the storm, one truth becomes clear: survival is not the end of the story, it is only the beginning of the reckoning that follows. In the days that follow, the air feels heavy with what has been endured. Chelsea is physically free, but she carries the weight of Allison's shadow inside her. Sleep brings no rest, only vivid nightmares in which the knife gleams again, the key slips from her reach, and Allison's voice slithers through the darkness. Danny sits by her bed at night, keeping silent vigil, knowing that presence sometimes speaks louder than words. Bill lingers near the doorway, wanting to step forward but unsure if his daughter can accept him yet. For Chelsea, forgiveness is not something to be given easily, not after years of neglect, but the fact that Bill is finally there matters. She notices his effort, even if she does not yet have the strength to acknowledge it. The authorities take Allison away, her face twisted into something between madness and satisfaction. She screams Chelsea's name as she's dragged into custody, a chilling reminder that obsession does not simply vanish with restraint. To the world outside, she will be a criminal, a cautionary tale. But to Chelsea, she will always be the embodiment of betrayal disguised as devotion. The illusion of Craig, the staged marriage, the relentless control, it was all a theater built to isolate and destroy. That truth will haunt Chelsea long after the handcuffs have closed around Allison's wrists. Bill and Danny find themselves navigating a fragile truce. They speak in hushed tones, their conversations circling around practicalities: therapy for Chelsea, legal proceedings, safety precautions. Yet beneath those exchanges lies the hum of unfinished history. Bill looks at Danny with eyes full of apology, silently pleading for understanding. Danny listens, but she is careful not to fall into the same patterns of the past. She knows that remorse does not erase years of absence, and she is unwilling to let herself believe in promises until actions prove them real. Still, she cannot ignore the shift inside him. For the first time in years, Bill seems fully present, stripped of excuses, raw in his determination to repair what he broke. Haley feels the distance grow unbearable. She tries to console herself with the thought that Bill is simply responding as a father, but deep down she knows the truth. Danny and Bill share a bond forged not only by their children but by the storm they just survived together. It is something Haley can neither compete with nor fully comprehend. The insecurity curdles into resentment. She tells herself she deserves better than to stand in Danny's shadow. Yet the thought of losing Bill still cuts deep. Whether she chooses to stay and fight for a love already slipping away or walk away with dignity remains a decision she postpones, day after day. Madison, meanwhile, isolates herself. Though others tell her she did the right thing in the end, she cannot silence the voice that reminds her of her silence earlier. She replays every warning sign she ignored. Every opportunity to prevent this tragedy. She sees Chelsea's pale face, the bruises left behind, and wonders if those wounds are partially hers to bear. Madison begins to journal late into the night, scribbling memories of Allison, documenting every moment she should have spoken. She tells herself it is not redemption, but perhaps if she records the truth, no one else will ever dismiss such signs again. For Chelsea, recovery becomes a slow process of reclaiming agency. She begins therapy, hesitant at first, but gradually she finds her voice in the safety of those sessions. She speaks about Allison's manipulation, the lies that twisted reality, the suffocating weight of obsession. She speaks about the terror of being silenced, restrained, made to feel powerless. Each word is a small release, like shards of glass being lifted from a wound. She also begins to explore her identity with renewed honesty, no longer willing to let fear or secrecy dictate her life. Her sexuality, once hidden under layers of shame and misunderstanding, becomes a truth she carries openly, though not without struggle. Bill listens when Chelsea chooses to share. The conversations are awkward, raw, sometimes painful, but he forces himself not to look away. He admits he was absent, admits he let his own comfort with Haley outweigh his responsibility to his daughter. He admits he should have known, should have seen, but he didn't. The confessions are clumsy, but Chelsea recognizes sincerity when she hears it. Forgiveness does not come immediately, but perhaps it will come in fragments. Over time, Danny remains the anchor. She knows the road ahead will not be smooth. Trauma does not dissipate overnight, and trust is not rebuilt in weeks. But she sees strength in Chelsea she had not seen before, a steel forged in survival. She also sees something changing in Bill. He is no longer running from the past but confronting it, even if belatedly. That gives her hope, though she guards it carefully. The final confrontation with Allison, however, leaves scars on all of them. When the trial approaches, Chelsea debates whether to testify. The thought of standing in the same room as Allison again makes her stomach turn, but she also knows silence would feel like surrender. Danny encourages her to decide on her own terms, promising support no matter what. Bill offers to be at her side if she chooses to face it, a gesture that speaks volumes about his newfound resolve. Chelsea eventually decides to testify. She walks into the courtroom with trembling hands but a steady gaze. Allison sits across from her, eyes still burning with the remnants of obsession, but this time Chelsea does not flinch. She speaks clearly, recounting the manipulation, the threats, the violence. Her voice cracks at times, but she pushes forward, determined to reclaim her narrative. When she finishes, the silence in the room is deafening. Allison smirks faintly, but the smirk carries no power anymore. Chelsea has taken that from her. The verdict comes swiftly, guilty on all counts. Allison is sentenced, her pleas of misunderstood devotion dismissed as madness. The gavel falls, and with it, a chapter closes. Yet for Chelsea, the healing is just beginning. She walks out of the courtroom into Danny's embrace, Bill at her side, and for the first time in a long time, she feels something akin to freedom, not just from physical restraint but from the hold Allison had on her mind. As the family steps back into the world, their future is uncertain. Danny knows the wounds will take years to mend. Bill knows his place in their lives must be earned, not assumed. Chelsea knows trust is fragile, and safety is something she must continue to fight for. Madison knows her silence will never fully be forgiven, but she hopes her voice moving forward will matter. Haley knows her role in Bill's life is tenuous, perhaps already slipping away, and she must decide if she can accept that reality or step aside. The gates they have passed through were not merely physical, but emotional and spiritual. Beyond them lies not peace, not yet, but possibility. Chelsea lifts her head to the horizon, scarred but unbroken, and takes a step forward.